Good to go.
Welcome to the April 8th, 2021 meeting of the Business Operations Committee of the Tennessee Public Charter School Commission. Dave Hansen speaking. This meeting is being held virtually via web conference. This meeting includes a public dial-in option that is available on the Charter Commission's website. I would like to introduce Ashley Thomas, the Commission's General Counsel. Ashley, would you please reference circumstances behind the virtual meeting and the relevant TCA section, please?
Absolutely. This is Ashley Thomas. Given the current COVID-19 pandemic and concerns for public safety and welfare, as well as the pandemic's impact on the Commission's budget, this Commission meeting is being conducted by electronic means as provided by TCA 8-44-108 and Governor Lee's Executive Order 78. Additionally, Executive Order 78 requires those speaking to identify themselves in a manner capable of permitting the public to ascertain the identity of the person speaking. This meeting is being recorded and will be available after its conclusion via link on the Commission's website, and a call-in number was provided on the Commission's website for the public to participate.
Dave Hansen, thank you, Ashley. As a reminder, all votes of the Commission are conducted via taking a roll call vote. Please identify yourself prior to speaking, making a motion, or voting. Chase, would you please take a roll call of the Commissioners?
Chase Ingle here. Commissioner Smith
Here.
is present, and Chairman Hansen
Here.
is present. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Chase. The Charter Commission currently has one vacancy, and once that vacancy is appointed by Governor Lee, the individual will join this committee. We hope to have that individual join us for our next committee meeting. Today's agenda includes operations and finance updates. We will hear the Executive Director's operational update and proposed procurement procedures and long-term space proposal. Then we will receive an update on the FY21 budget to actuals and an update on the FY22 projected budget. Does anyone have any comments to make regarding the agenda before we vote to approve? Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Eddie Smith, so moved.
Dave Hansen seconds. Is there any discussion? Chase, could you please take a roll call vote?
Chase Ingle. Commissioner Smith
Yes.
votes aye, and Chairman Hansen
Votes aye.
votes aye. The agenda is approved.
Thank you, Chase. The minutes of the meeting held on February 4th, 2021 have been provided. Does anyone have any edits to make regarding the prior minutes before we proceed?
Well, it's just me and you, so I'm going to make the motion that we approve.
Dave Hansen seconds. Is there any discussion? Chase, could you please take a roll call vote?
Chase Ingle again. Commissioner Smith
Yes.
votes aye, and Chairman Hansen
Aye.
votes aye. The minutes from February 4th are approved.
Thank you, Chase. The first item on our agenda is an operations update, procurement procedures, and long-term space proposal from our Executive Director, the wonderful Tess Stovall. Tess, can you please provide your update to the committee?
Thank you, Chair Hansen. This is Tess Stovall. I provided to the committee a written report of the operational updates that are pertinent to this committee. I'm just going to highlight a couple of things that are worthy of discussion, as well as things that we would like to have the committee to vote to approve. So first, from a staffing perspective, we have hired one additional staff member since our last committee meeting. Kelly Croneman will be transferring from the State Board of Education to the Charter Commission, and we are working through that transfer process now because she's still supporting the school district and the schools at the State Board of Education. We want to be conscious of that continuation of work. She is going to be joining the full commission meeting tomorrow so that you all will be able to meet her at least virtually. We are continuing to work on the hiring process to hire a coordinator of data and operations, and we hope to have that individual selected very soon, and we'll provide a full update to the commission when that individual has been selected. For vote and discussion today, we do have procurement procedures that have been developed by our General Counsel, Ashley Thomas, and Melanie Harrell, our Director of Finance and Operations. This is to ensure that the Commission is in compliance with statute, which requires the Commission to develop procurement procedures. In particular, I wanted to highlight that the procedures state that the commission will follow all rules and regulations of the Central Procurement Office, so CPO, which is how generally state agencies follow the procurement procedures around contracting, as well as we set a $25,000 threshold by which any contract that we are proposing that would exceed that threshold would come to the Business Operations Committee for review, and based on a positive recommendation from this committee would go to the full commission for approval prior to signature. I did want to note that we recognize that there may be circumstances in the future which require quicker action than being able to bring a contract before the committee prior to signature. So we do include an emergency procedure that would allow me as the executive director to execute a contract prior to full commission approval, even if it exceeds that $25,000 threshold, with approval of the commission chair and the Business Operations Committee chair. I outlined in the written report the current procurement activities that are happening with the commission staff. I think the important thing for you all to note is that we are able to transfer a lot of the existing contracts that the State Board of Education had to the Charter Commission, because the entity that is, I guess, a party in the contract remains the state of Tennessee. This was positive news that we received from the Central Procurement Office, and something that they have actually done recently when the Tennessee Early Intervention System switched from the Department of Education to DIDD. So we're really following the pathway that those two agencies set. So Ashley and Melanie are meeting regularly to work through the contracting process on all existing contracts to ensure we're ready to go for July 1. In terms of LEA setup, we're going to get into much deeper conversations regarding the project plans for our LEA in our School Performance and Accountability Committee meeting later on this afternoon. But just wanted to highlight, particularly for this committee, that we are and have begun the consolidated funding application. Melanie will talk about that in greater detail when we get into the budget, but this means that we, as a district, have received an initial federal funding allocation. We are working with our schools on developing their own budgets, and we'll be submitting that application for approval to the Tennessee Department of Education. I did want to highlight, and this is something that Melanie will highlight in her budget presentation as well, is that we did have one of our approved charter schools opt to delay its opening from this August, so school year 21-22, to the following August. So it'll begin in school year 22-23. This is Cornerstone Prep. And they are allowed via statute to delay one academic year. So they have provided that notification. The reasoning is probably obvious. We are in a time of COVID. They're trying to nail down a facility and they want to open successfully. And so this is not an uncommon situation, but I think what's important for this committee to notice is that this is going to impact our authorizer fee collection. And so we're going to have to make some potential adjustments as it relates to our authorizer fee. And the last item that I want I'm presenting to this committee for discussion is a proposed office space relocation for the Charter Commission. So we have been approached by the Department of General Services as a part of the greater conversation that they are having with state agencies around rent and facilities and how to really consolidate state agencies across the downtown complex here in Nashville. So the proposal that I have shared with this committee and that I would be looking for feedback and approval on is that beginning in FY23, so August of 2022, that the commission would be relocating from the 5th floor of Davy Crockett to the 8th floor of Davy Crockett. A part of the move and construction would be that the general services would be covering the costs of that construction, all of that moving. It would come at no expense of the Charter Commission. We would have its own suite that would be branded for the Charter Commission. It would have space for 15 seats, as well as we would have access to a pretty large conference room on the 8th floor that I have walked, as well as Chairman Griscom has walked, and we think that from a go-forward basis would be great to host Charter Commission meetings. So I would be looking, particularly from this committee, for you all to consider and vote on the procurement procedures and then also the updated space plan so that we would be able to move forward on both of those items. And I'm happy to take any questions from the committee at this point.
And Tess, this is not so much a question as it is a statement. You know, I looked at this, the plan for the office moves. You know, when we first looked at the office space, obviously we didn't have any staff at that time, and having you there, you know, if that is what you believe is in the best interest for us, then I fully support it. And I think you just lost Dave.
No, I'm here.
Okay, you disappeared from my screen.
No, this is Dave Hansen. I agree with Eddie Smith, with Commissioner Smith. So maybe, Tess, I'm sorry if I missed this in the shuffle. If we end up having this is obviously a kind of crystal ball question, but say the ASD schools end up coming to the Charter Commission, would that mean that our space needs would increase again, or how would that whole thing work if you were to be kind of obviously an imperfect prediction?
Sure. This is Tess Stovall, and thank you for that question. So the current space proposal that you all have in front of you today would accommodate up to 15 staff members in terms of actual bodies in the space. Currently, the Charter Commission is authorized to hire up to 10 staff members. So we've already built in a cushion that would allow the staff to grow by an additional 5 positions to accommodate growth. Either we hire additional staff through our appellate functions, or if we get given additional responsibilities by the General Assembly. The other thing that in particular I like about this space proposal is that Stream understands, which is the real estate folks, they understand that the Charter Commission in the future has a very high likelihood of growing staff members. And so they're actually going to be keeping some space on that floor, what they're deeming as flex space, that would allow us to, if we get to a point where we're beyond 15 staff members, we would be able to add on cubicles right outside of the suite, such that we'd be able to accommodate additional staff members.
Thank you, Tess. Eddie, I actually served on a nonprofit board where the CFO was so good that we came up with a try and stump this person. So I feel like we're going to have to do that with Tess. It's like we're going to have to come up with a question to try and stump Tess.
Well, I was fixing to give her one. So here's the question. I know Senator Bell had a bill that has been put on, I think, summer study or taken off notice for now, that would allow for-profit charter schools to come into the state. Again, crystal ball. If that were to pass, what do you see as the rate of growth that we could be looking at? Because, I mean, not that I support that, but that is a possibility as things move forward. And how could that change our landscape in the next 3 to 5 years?
Thank you for that question. This is Tess Stovall. So I think what we have internally been thinking about, particularly as it relates to the potential growth that might be coming via the General Assembly's action on the ASD exit transfer, but also knowing that we have schools already in the pipeline, as well as potential other schools in the pipeline, that we would need to be thinking about from a staff perspective, splitting out roles such that we have someone, for example, who's owning all of federal programs, as opposed to someone who's doing federal programs and special population. So when we think about any additional staff requests, I think we would get to a place where we'd be looking at an economies of scale that we would have. I think, you know, and Melanie, I'd like your input here too. I think about 15 staff members would allow us to continue to expand in terms of opening additional charter schools, regardless of context or background, but still be able to perform the work at a high level. Certainly, it is not we open another school and we need one additional staff member. There's certainly some economies of scale that happen when we get to a certain threshold, but we are thinking, okay, right now we would have 4 schools in operation next year. You know, the scale of work would significantly change if we were looking at 10 schools. And so that's how we've really been thinking about those staffing projections and really trying to think ahead. When would we need to, for example, split out the work, have someone who's, for example, only owning student information systems and not student information systems plus myriad other things. So that's how we're really thinking about the growth of the Charter Commission staff. Melanie, I'd like for you to add in anything that I may have missed there.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Melanie Harrell. I would also say that something that we've looked at when we've talked about staffing projections as we're growing, or if there are potentially additional responsibilities that we receive from the General Assembly. We did do some comparisons and looked at staffing charts for other authorizers and looked at salary ranges and really targeted at what point do you add which positions and how are other authorizers thinking about this work, especially if we get into an environment where potentially we're looking at more turnaround type work. So 15 staff members, I think, is something that we would be comfortable growing into. Now, of course, if in 3 to 5 years we see we have 40 schools, that may change. But for now, I think we feel like that's a very comfortable place to be, to allow to break out some of those standalone pieces if we need to.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tess. You've obviously put in a lot of work and effort to have this body ready to handle our business for 2021. Thank you for the hard work. I think we're ready for a vote on the proposed procurement procedures and the facilities proposal. So first, is there a motion to approve the proposed procurement procedures?
Eddie Smith, motion made.
Dave Hansen, seconds. Is there any discussion? Chase, could you please take a roll call vote?
Chase Engel here. Commissioner Smith
Yes.
votes aye, and Chairman Hansen
Aye.
votes aye. The motion passes.
Thank you, Chase. Is there a motion to approve the long-term facilities proposal?
So moved.
Dave Hansen, seconds. Is there any discussion? Chase, could you please take a roll call vote?
Commissioner Smith
Yep.
votes aye. Chairman Hansen
Votes aye.
votes aye. This is Chase Engel, and the motion is approved.
Thank you, Chase. The next item on our agenda today will be coming from our Director of Finance and Operations, Melanie Harrell. Melanie, can you please provide us with an update for the fiscal year 2021 budget to actuals?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman Hansen. This is Melanie Harrell. I will pull up the budget to actuals and share my screen. This was also provided for you in the PDF that's on SharePoint as well. Can everybody see this okay, or do I need to zoom in a little bit further?
We can see it.
Okay, perfect. So I think as we were reviewing the budget to actuals, there are a couple of just big picture flags I want to give the committee. So first, we are continuing the same way we were at the last meeting to operate well under budget for this fiscal year. We are still seeing some savings due to the ongoing pandemic. Moving meetings virtually has, of course, reduced some of our commission meeting budgets, and staff is not doing the travel that was anticipated when the budget was created. We are also some savings overall in compensation, primarily due to it just taking time to build out staff. So I know we discussed a lot in our last committee meeting that we do see some variation across individual line items based on the way things are categorized by accounting, as opposed to what was maybe anticipated or thought would be the case when the budget was created. So for example, and the most clear example I can think of is that staff computers are wrapped up in the state agency professional services line item, as opposed to where we kind of thought they would be with computers, equipment, supplies, and materials. As Tess also mentioned, we have made some updates to the compensation projections, given that we have hired our first coordinator, Kelly Croneman. We're very excited that she'll be joining us from the state board as our coordinator of federal programs and special populations. We are also, as Tess mentioned, hoping to extend an offer for our second coordinator role of data and operations, ideally within about the next 10 days or so. So we're very excited to hopefully have both of those positions hired and kind of settled as we go into the summer. And the personnel projections reflect those updates. The second line item that I did want to just flag for everyone is the facilities rent. We have not yet had our office expenses actually hit our account or our books. So even though we have expanded and are using office space in Davy Crockett and we don't foresee any changes to our projections, those costs just haven't been allocated to us yet. So we are in close contact with accounting and are keeping an eye on making sure we are getting billed for that as soon as possible. And we will be keeping an eye on this, and we'll update this line item when those expenses are actually hitting our books. The last thing I wanted to talk about, and I know Tess, part of her operations update, gave a great overview of our procurement activities and some of our contracting processes. So we do still have quite a bit of room in our non-state agency professional services, which is this top line item here under non-compensation. So as we are engaging in these procurement and contracting processes, which I am working closely with our council on, we are still seeing, working out terms and details that may affect whether some services would fall under an FY21 or FY22 allocation. We'll talk a little bit more in depth about that as part of our conversations about the updated projections for the FY22 budget, but it is something that we are still looking at closely and trying to keep in mind and be strategic about. This could also potentially impact the forecasted expenditures in that line item in the future. So other than those kind of big flags, I think, the rest of the line items I believe are very straightforward. There are not that many changes compared to the projections from the previous committee meeting. So I would love to just open it up for any questions that any of you may have.
No question, but I say if they don't bill us by June 30th, they have to eat it.
I might let you be the one that communicates that message.
I'm not afraid.
Yeah, we are. I have been told by accounting that that this will be coming. It is just a matter of, I think, especially with the pandemic and what we like to call Operation Tetris, which is the greatest project name of all time. There are still a lot of staffing seats agency-wide or statewide that haven't been updated yet. So some people are still operating under seating charts as of March 2020 before things changed. But it is something that I am regularly checking in with them on, and we should have straightened out by the end of the month.
And see, what I heard you just say is they have an available budget pool that can cover that, so we can let them eat it.
We also have an available budget pool that we feel comfortable with, so I think we'll figure it out. We'll get it figured out and straightened out.
No, thank you, Melanie. All this looks good, and I like the way it's laid out. Just easy to follow where everything's moving, because there are a lot of moving pieces in this first year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Are there any other questions about any of these pieces?
This is Dave Hansen. I don't think we have any other questions. I thank Melanie for breaking down the current year fiscal updates for the committee and for the discussion. And I feel like we need to find some way to capture Eddie, like with like a wagging finger, like if it's not by June 30th, they eat it. Like we need to have that as like a video GIF we can include in an email. Tess is like frantically shaking her head like, no, please no. I think the final item on our agenda is a discussion of the updated budget projections for fiscal year 2022. Melanie, can you please give us the latest projections we have for FY22?
Absolutely, and thank you again, Chairman Hansen. This is Melanie Harrell. We wanted to provide the committee with updated projections and some of our current thoughts about the budget for FY22. As you all know, we will be bringing a formal revised budget for your consideration at our July meeting. And at that time, we will have what should hopefully be very firmed up projections and estimates, especially as we get kind of past legislative session and see how things are going to shake out. However, beginning in March, we start receiving updated enrollment projections from our authorized charter schools about not only their overall enrollment, but also subgroup enrollment projections. And this is part of the LEA planning and that consolidated funding application process. So we did want to provide kind of an update of where we're starting at based on those initial numbers. We do revise these projections monthly as we get more information from our schools. And so as we get closer to the start of the 21-22 school year, these should be more and more accurate over time. So actually, before we talk about the overall budget projections, I wanted to first turn everyone's attention to the second page of that PDF, which is the authorizer fee projections. So as we briefly discussed in our last meeting, the authorizer fee is the most variable part of our revenue, and it's driven by student enrollment at the school level. So as we received these initial enrollment projections from each school, we revised these authorizer fee projections accordingly. One of the big changes was, as Tess mentioned, Cornerstone Prep decided to delay opening for a year as they can. And so that did reduce some of our overall projections. The big takeaway is, though some of the individual school level projections obviously look different, the overall net effect was about an 8% reduction in what we had initially projected for our authorizer fee revenue. So the current projection is about $550,000. Again, obviously these enrollment numbers will fluctuate, and we typically see the most fluctuation for schools that are getting ready to open for their first year, such as Nashville Collegiate Prep. They currently have a projected enrollment of 240. We did talk to them, and in conversations with them, they feel that is a very conservative projection, which is what we asked for, because we want to avoid any kind of massive scale backs when we get to truing up potentially BEP or federal funds. So that should in turn mean that hopefully our authorizer fee projections are fairly conservative as well. So again, the kind of overall net effect is that these projections are about 8% lower than what was initially presented to the committee at the last time this information was reviewed. And so that is something that we've had to keep in mind as we looked at formulating the kind of overall updated budget projections. Before I move on, are there any questions specifically about the authorizer fee projections?
Hey, Melanie, this is Tessa. Can I make one note as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
I also want to point out that we have not received the per pupil estimate for FY22 either. So I think that's also going to be a key driver to changes that you see between this presentation in July. You can see that the BEP rate that Melanie is showing you is based off July 2020 BEP. We know that there are lots of things that have changed. So we are awaiting information from the Department of Education as it relates to what that BEP rate will be. So I wanted to make sure that you all kind of understood what's going to be driving changes, both in terms of enrollment as well as BEP when we come back to you in July.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you for adding that, Tess. And it is something that we are also regularly checking in with folks at the department about, and we are hoping that there shouldn't be, at the very least, any major fluctuations in a downward trend, but it is something that we are keeping a close eye on. Okay, any other questions about the authorizer fee? Okay. So now just to flip back to that first page in the PDF, the overall budget projections. First and foremost, I know we previously talked about some of the contingencies and changes that may be coming down the pipeline with legislative session. So I do want to flag that these updated projections are just based on the kind of base governor's proposed budget that was discussed last time this budget was discussed. And it does incorporate those updated authorizer fee projections that were previously mentioned. So this doesn't incorporate anything potentially that could come down the pipeline with supplemental legislation. That is something, of course, that would be reflected, though, in our July meeting. And as Tess mentioned, there are quite a few things that have not quite been firmed up, such as the BEP amounts, but overall, I think we are generally pretty comfortable saying that we are anticipating operating on a fairly tight budget for next year. I know we have had conversations internally that FY22 was likely to be our leanest year, and so that's something that we have been closely monitoring and prepared to make adjustments accordingly as necessary. So given that reduction in the proposed authorizer fee, we did make some changes primarily to the below the line non-compensation operating costs for next year, particularly in items like professional services. We updated some of the travel projections to reflect what were slightly lower GSA rates for meeting costs and staff travel expenses. And we are also keeping a close eye, as I mentioned previously, on this as part of our contracting process. So as we think about our contract terms, effective dates, and when services will be provided, we are still in a very comfortable place with these number for professional services, but it is also somewhere that we are keeping in mind potential reductions as well. So again, we are watching all of this unfold in real time. And so for our July meeting, we will have not only much firmer estimates with legislative session being over, with hopefully having the final BEP numbers and also final federal allocation numbers as well. So at that time, we hope to, in addition to presenting kind of a formal revised budget, we will also bring some contingency plans for areas where if we potentially see a 15% reduction or surplus for whatever reason, where we feel like those changes will be made. So that is something that will be coming down the pipeline for our July meeting as well. So are there any questions about kind of these FY22 projections and what we're thinking for next year?
This is Dave Hansen. I don't think there are any questions. Thank you, Melanie, for the additional information. It seems pretty easy to me. Just you need perfect 2 decimal place precision with no sense of how many students or BEP and whether COVID will be over. So we'll just get that by July. That'd be great.
It's no big deal, right? It's easy.
We'll obviously be keeping a close eye on the projections moving forward. Thank you all for your attendance and participation at this meeting of the Business Operations Committee of the Tennessee Public Charter School Commission. At this time, I would like to ask if there are any final comments or questions. If there are no further comments, do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Eddie Smith, motion to adjourn.
Dave Hansen, seconds. Chase, could you please take a roll call vote?
Yes, sir. Chase Engel here. Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Votes aye. Chairman Hansen?
Votes aye.
Votes aye. The motion is approved.
Thank you, Chase. The next meeting, the Business Operations Committee, is scheduled for July 12th of 2021. I look forward to seeing you at the full commission meeting tomorrow. We stand adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you.